Hi everyone, welcome to this Java tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at the idea of null. We're going to be looking at a string array. Here we've got an array of length 5, and there are 4 strings in the array, and there is one null. What is this null? What is it doing there? What does it mean? So let's jump into our IDE and see if we can figure out what's going on here. Okay, to get started, I'm just going to show you something which maybe you know, or maybe you don't know. I'm going to very quickly create a new integer array of length 10. Now, I haven't populated this integer array with any values yet. I've just declared it to have a length of 10. So if I send this reference variable values, which references this array, let's send it to a function. This function, I'm going to change that to int, will process an integer array. This is an integer array, so this is fine. And it's just going to display the contents of the array. Okay, so let's run this program and see if it works. Wow, okay. So very conveniently, when we construct a new integer array in Java, Java conveniently populates the integer array with zeros at each element. Okay. Now, I wonder what it does with booleans. Let's find out. This time display is going to process a boolean array, and I'll send it a reference to a boolean array. So everything ties together. Let's run the program and find out. It's going to be true or false. Ooh, it's false. So every time we construct a new Boolean array in Java, Java conveniently places false as a kind of placeholder at each element in the array. If we were to do double, I bet you, of course, it's going to be 0.0. But let's find out. Bet my house on it. Yes. What about strings? Strings are a little bit more complicated than primitive data types like Boolean and double and int. A string is a kind of object. Okay, so I wonder what Java will put as a placeholder when we construct a new string array. Let's find out. Java puts something called null. Now null it's an object. A string is an object. And null is an object, but null is an empty object. It kind of seems useless, but it can be very useful. And let's have a quick look and see if we can find out why it's useful. Let's just change the code a little bit. This time I'm just going to populate an array of length 3 with 3 strings. And I'm just going to get rid of that for the moment. I'm going to process the array and what I'm going to do is if one of the elements in the array is the same as the word Joe, I'm going to delete it. But deleting something from an array is pretty tricky. How can we delete one of these strings from an array which in Java has a fixed length? Arrays are fixed length. This is a problem. One trick is just to replace the element with an empty object called null. This kind of indicates that, for example, if we have Joe here and we want to get rid of Joe, just put null in his place. We still have an array of fixed length 3 and Joe isn't there anymore. Perfect. So null can be very useful. Now let's look at another way of using null. This time what we're going to do is call a function called find Joe. And we're going to send it a reference to our array. And this function is going to return a string. Okay, so let's design the findNo function. It processes what is values again? Values is a string array. So findJo processes string arrays. I'm just going to call it names. Doesn't matter what you call it, it's just a parameter. So names will grab the same reference to this array. Okay. Now what we're going to do in findJo, we're going to loop through the array. That is the name of the array, right? Names, yeah, names. This is the parameter names. Names.length. If one of the elements in the array is the same as the word Joe, it means we found Joe. Yay! So I'm just going to return the word Joe. I have to return a string. I have to return a string, no choice. This is the design of the function. So if I find the word Joe, I'm going to return Joe. Okay, that's fine. Now, what if the for loop processes the whole array, but it doesn't find Joe? We don't return. The loop finishes. We come to line 23. We still have to return something. We have to return a string. But we didn't find anything. Why don't we just do this? Null, it's a kind of object, so is a string, so these match. The return types are actually the same. Very, very convenient. Null is very convenient. And if I return null, all it means is I didn't find what I was looking for. So in my main program here, I can say if result is the same as null, not found. Let's say Joe not found, just to be really dramatic. Else, we'll just print out the result, which is the word, should be the word Joe. Okay? So let's run this program and see what happens. Null, there's that magic word. Null pointer exception. Cannot invoke equals ignore case. Oh, because names I is null. Oh, interesting. A null pointer exception. A programmer's worst nightmare. Remember that our array has a null in it already, which is very common. This is fine. And we're sending it to the findJo function. So a reference to this array comes in here, and we start looping through it. When I is 0, names I is null, which means digital nothing. This does not have the dot equals ignore case method associated with it. This is associated with strings. Null is not a string. So we cannot run this code on null. One technique is just to check that the element we are currently processing doesn't equal null and the original logic that we're looking for. So check that the element is not null, and then you can continue with your other logic. Okay, so let's run it again and see if that deals with the null pointer exception. Yes, it does. Okay, so have a think about what this video has introduced today and see if you can start to use null in your computer programs.